Hi guys, and welcome back to another painting tutorial where today I'll take you through how I paint quartered design Viking Shields. So over a Chaos Black undercoat, I'm just going to begin painting in some CALIBAN green and just focusing on two sections of the shield. And don't stress too much about being overly tidy with this step, as once we get to the next step we'll be able to overlap any of the green that's sort of spilled over into those other sections. So just using the center of the bones on the crux terminatus as a reference. So just try and meet the colors halfway where the center of the bone is. So after having applied 2 coats of CALIBAN green and just allowing a reasonable amount of time for that to dry, I'm now going to move on to ZANDRI dust. And first off, I was using just a cheap nylon brush for the CALIBAN green application, but now I've switched to my most commonly used detail brush, my Raphael 8404 size 30 brush. Now do try not to overlap too much of the color onto the diamonds of the Space Wolves Head Taker's shield, and also the crux terminatus. It doesn't matter so much, as you can certainly go back and correct it, but you just don't want to overload too much color onto those other details. Obviously it's pretty hard to avoid though, especially when you're just doing a base color. But yeah, we'll go back and correct around those details shortly. So as you can see, I've already laid down some of the CALIBAN green and WARPSTONE glow on the opposite side of the shield. I just wanted to test and see how it looked. I was really happy with how it looked. So now just doing the other side, I'm now just doing some fine line highlights of this. And don't stress so much about layering this up too many times, as we will be returning to these colors shortly and tidying up those details a little bit more. And now with just an even mix of ZANDRI dust and WRAITHBONE, I'm now just going to be doing the exact same steps over all of the bone color. And now moving on to WARPSTONE glow on its own. I'm once again just going to be following over the previous WARPSTONE glow and CALIBAN green highlight, and really just ensuring that we're doing plenty of fine lines. Effectively giving the appearance of a wood grain effect, which we'll certainly add to later on in the tutorial. And next up, with an even mix of RHINOX hide, LAHMIAN medium, and water, so a 1-1-1 mix. It doesn't have to be sort of overly accurate, just ensure that it's not going to darken the overall finish of the shield too much. Really just trying to muddy this down a little bit and make it look a little bit more battle-worn. Which is certainly very well suited to Space Wolves. And after having given the RHINOX hide, water, and LAHMIAN medium mix a fair amount of time to dry, I'm now going to WRAITHBONE on its own, and having this watered down enough so that it's obviously not too runny, but certainly not too thick as well. I find with colours such as Ulthorn Grey, WRAITHBONE, and White, for example, sometimes a bit of medium can be beneficial just to help smoothen them out a little bit. As they can be a little bit tricky to get the mix right. So it's certainly something I recommend if you're fairly new to painting with any of those 3 colours. There are more. Can't think of them off the top of my head as of right now. But those three that I mentioned are certainly ones that can be a little bit trickier to work with. Certainly not so much through an airbrush, at least from my own personal experience, but by brush they can be a little bit trickier than some other paints. So certainly something worth considering. Just add a small amount of medium and then just see how it's sort of applying by brush on your miniatures. As you can see though, just using the very tip of my brush, really trying to use this quite sparingly. And once again, just returning it to the Warpstone glow. Now, of course, when we applied that shade earlier, it did tone everything down quite a bit. I just wanted to bring out the details a little bit more, so I've just gone back to Warpstone, and once again, just following over those previous highlights. So next up, to begin painting in all of the wood grain effects, I decided to, so originally I was just going to use RHINOX hide, however I wanted them to be a little bit deeper and a little bit darker of course, so I've done an even mix of ABADDON black and RHINOX hide, and it's fairly watered down, again though not overly, so just really try and find that happy medium where it's running smoothly but not too watery. Because especially with details such as this, it's really important to get the mix right, just making life a lot easier when applying fine details such as this. So with wood grain effects, of course they can differ in appearance, in both fiction and in real life. However, in this instance, I was really just going for some pretty well sort of pretty even wood panels. So as you can see, just trying to create some fairly even separation between them, and just really taking my time, just really try and focus the tip of your brush toward the miniature as well, ensure that it's not overloaded. As you can see, there's barely any on my brush, because worst case scenario, you can always just go back and add a little bit more paint. As opposed to having to correct, especially having to go back and correct some of those lighter colors when you've overlapped with the darker colors. It can make it a little bit more difficult. So yeah, just really take your time with it. Another thing to consider as well, in terms of getting the lines pretty much dead straight, is to use some hobby tape. You can get it in all different sizes by millimeters 1 and 2, 3 and so on. So that's certainly another thing to consider as well if you're wanting to make it a little bit easier. I do actually have some of those. I haven't really used them much yet though. I'm sort of saving them for when I paint a dreadnought or something like that. Now, as you can see, I'm just adding some small little wood grain effects at the bottom of the shield. So we've got those sort of larger straight lines through, giving the sort of overall impression of the wood panel, and then just adding some of that sort of natural texture that you would see in the wood, of course. So next up, just going back to WRAITHBONE once more. And essentially I'm just going to be highlighting in around those small little wood grain effects that I'd done just before. And as a final touch, I really wanted to draw out some more attention toward the green. I was originally sort of considering just leaving it at Warpstone glow. However, considering how vibrant the bone effect was for those particular wood panels, I decided that the green needed just a little bit more. So now just with some Moot green, once again, just making sure that you get that mix nice and smooth. Essentially just following over the same sort of idea that I just did previously with the WRAITHBONE. So just try not to overlap the wood grain effect. If you do need to go back, of course, to the RHINOX hide ABADDON black mix, you can certainly just tidy those up a little bit. But just be patient with it and just gradually build up those highlights. And if you really want to make the green quite vibrant, you can certainly layer this up a few times. I was pretty happy with how it looked sort of through the center, and then just at the ends of the wood grain effect, I decided to make those a little bit more vibrant. And with that, the quartered design Viking Shield is now finished. So I had a great time filming this one. I'm really enjoying Space Wolves actually. I'll have plenty more tutorials coming on them in the near future, and I'll try to branch out to some other things as well. And in the meantime, if you're in Australia or the UK and you would like to support the channel, the links will be in the description below. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but if you're intending on buying any of your hobby needs and you use those links, it does support me. So thank you very much for watching. I will see you again in the next one.